Well, hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser here in Victoria, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all the while fixing it up in anticipation for some pretty major cruising someday. If that's the sort of thing you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. So, what am I up to this week? Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not really quite sure. Probably not all that much. I didn't want to go on about it, but it's gone on long enough. I should let you know that 2 weeks ago on St. Patrick's Day, I put my back out really bad. 2 minutes after shooting the Beer of the Week for that episode, I stepped off the boat here in my kilt and went down hard with serious pain all the way across the back of my back. I was able to crawl to MV Zephyrus. Did I mention I was wearing a kilt? And Lady Zephyrus looked after me quite wonderfully for 2 weeks. I was in bed. Just able to get up and sit up to edit the last two episodes that you've seen with just barely enough credit, because a couple of days before St. Patrick's Day I actually got a few things done, but you probably could tell there wasn't a lot going on there. So I'm out and I'm walking. The truth is, if I bend over more than 5 degrees, I will just shudder in agony. I have a physio appointment for tomorrow morning and we'll see how this is all gonna go. I'm feeling pretty good. Getting around is not so bad. I can get on and off the boat, but I can't lift anything at all. Okay, let's do something. Well, the first project might have been a little over ambitious, but I got the steps in. Oh, I can't even bend down again to show you them opening up, but it was an absolute requirement because it's the only way I could climb up into the wheelhouse with any comfort at all. Okay, I think maybe cleaning up is about the best project for today. Well, hey, a boxing 2 weeks in a row. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this company, Speed Hut. I realize the lighting isn't awesome for this, but it's what we got. Anyway, I'd never heard of this company until recently, and it was in the search for some really awesome gauges for the instrument panel that I came across them. Now, the standard, I mean, there's tons of companies that make gauges. Stuart Warner, VDO, two of the big ones. And I've bought their stuff before and been relatively pleased with it, but it's seeming to get a little hard these days to get this stuff. There seems to be a supply chain problem. Maybe it has something to do with COVID. I don't know what it is. Speed Hut makes gauges and it's all they do. And they make really, look at all these cables. They make really, really nice, fully electronic, stepper motor driven gauges. So basically the gauge itself is a very simple little, oh, sorry, there's the front of it. Well, there's the tack. So let me just pull that out of there without making a mess. And goodness, nice and simple. I hope the lighting is okay for what you're looking at, but that is a lovely, straightforward, very, very simple tachometer. And look, there's almost nothing to it. Again, it's completely electronic, so it has no moving, well, the only moving parts is the stepper motor and the needle. Fully configurable. There's a programming interface for it to set it up to take any number of pulses per minute or whatever from the tack sensor, which is on the alternator on the Beta Marine. But look how lovely and thin that is, which is actually important for what I'm doing. I absolutely love it. These are actual aluminum, these bezels. I'm not going to take it off right now. Love it, love it. Let's look at a few more. I see they double packed some of these. There are a lot of wires and sensors and connectors, all that stuff. Good stuff. Now, if you look on these, I was able to, this is the engine temperature and engine oil pressure, and I was able to customize these by putting the word engine on the gauge as well. And that's important because I actually have a transmission oil pressure gauge as well, which is in here somewhere, and we'll say transmission or maybe gear. I forget what I put. Anyway, so let me assemble these all together here in a minute, and we'll see if everything is as I expected it. Okay, all unpacked and checked out. So excited about this. We have the tachometer, we have a voltmeter, we have 2 fuel gauges, we have engine temperature, engine oil pressure, transmission oil pressure, and vacuum. If you've been following along, you know I like to put a vacuum gauge between the Racor filters, the diesel fuel filters, and the engine lift pump, and that will indicate whether the filters are clogged. If the vacuum rises, I can tell that the pump is pumping too hard on a clogged filter, and that's an early warning for watch out, bad things are coming. Here, let's have a closer look. Ooh, have a sweet look at those. Now all these gauges are full 270-degree sweep, which was a criteria I had that I really wanted, so you get a really much better visual aspect than ones that just sweep through 90 degrees. It's also very difficult in some gauge lines to find all the gauges you want in the same line. For instance, finding a high pressure oil sensor for the gear, finding a vacuum gauge, finding a programmable fuel tank, and a programmable tachometer. So although these were not cheap, I understand that they are very high quality, they're very well reviewed, and I'm not dissing any other gauge manufacturers, absolutely, but I'm excited about these. I think they'll look great, they'll look really classic and vintage. And you'll notice I have one extra ring. This ring is for a dedicated depth sounder gauge, which I'll share with you shortly when it gets here, but it's pretty exciting because I like to have a dedicated depth sounder right in the helm with everything else. All right, so getting back to the actual instrument panel, I've showed you the gauges. I am so thrilled with these gauges, maybe with one possible exception. I don't know what you're going to be able to see, but these are completely customizable. So basically I chose the color of the back face, the type of letterings, the letter, the color of the needle, etc., the type of bezel. Well, I wanted to basically create something that was as close to a vintage Stuart Warner type gauge as I could, and I'm generally pleased. One of the things I'm a bit disappointed in is the bezel. The bezel is polished aluminum. They don't have any chrome bezels. And I find, frankly, it looks plasticky, to tell you the truth, because it's perfectly polished aluminum. It's actually billet aluminum. Here's the spare one I got for the depth sounder, and it's nicely threaded on the inside. It's a beautiful piece. Now this one I have scuffed up with a Scotch-Brite, your classic Scotch-Brite. And what I've done is I've turned it more into brushed aluminum or brushed stainless, or I don't know. I think I like that better, but time will tell. Anyway, that's just a subtle thing, because the whole thing about this bloody instrument panel is functionality, but there's an aesthetic element, and if you know me well enough, you know that that's a big part of it for me. Okay, so here's the sheet of brass. It's going to be the instrument panel. Basically the tack goes offset, and then the other gauges go all the way around it, and down this side go all the switches. Let's not jump ahead to that just now, because I want to show you one more gauge. I might have mentioned that I got all the gauges for the engine from Speed Hut, and I'm thrilled with those generally, but I bought one more bezel because I was looking for a in-dash depth sounder. Now these have been available on and off over time, and sometimes you can get relatively nice ones, but today they're mostly just relatively cheap ones that go inside the hull and shoot through the hull or hang off the transom. Now, what I was really looking for was a 2 1/8 gauge that was NMEA 2000, which means I could read out quality NMEA 2000, which is the digital standard for marine electronics, from a high quality transducer. Let's wait for this helicopter to go over. All right then, well, the long story short, after many hours, read weeks or months of searching, I ended up finding a 2 1/8, 2 1/16, whatever, standard size gauge that is an NMEA 2000 readout. Now this is super exciting. This could be a game changer. The company is Veritron, which I believe is associated with VDO, and I believe that because of the very VDO-esque looking securing nut on this, and some websites seem to equate the two together. It also, the bezel looks very much like one of the video lines. So what I understand, this is an OEM product, and that is echoed by the fact that it came in a box with no documentation and no flash. It is a digital screen, a small LCD, color LCD screen that is connected to a multi-pin connector to which this cable can attach. Now, let's look at this for a minute. This is a multi-pin connector with a ton of pigtails. One is an NMEA 2000 connector to go onto the backbone. The other is a schwack of other conductors. Two will be power. Two, I believe, are able to be set to a resistive type sender. Like, let's say you wanted to use this for a fuel gauge. You can send this straight to the resistive fuel gauge and calibrate it to read depth of fuel gauge level. The other two, I believe, can be sent to a light or an alarm that you can use for a preset limit set into this. Okay, I keep saying preset because this thing is completely user configurable. It's got no switches, no buttons. There are no controls on the front of it. You control it from your phone, either through Bluetooth or perhaps at near, I forget what it's called, another technology. Basically, once this is powered up, you run an app on your phone and you can make this do absolutely anything from what I understand. Certainly you can have it pick up any channel off the NMEA 2000. So it could read fuel tanks, it could read water tanks, it could read wind speed, it could read hull speed. I'm going to use it to read depth. So it'll turn on a display of digital depth for that. So these are very exciting, but it's completely generic. This gauge can be used for anything. So in principle, I could have bought 8 of these, filled the dash panel with them, and set each of them to pick up a different kind of data. That's super neat. Now, I don't really want digital readouts for temperature and speed and stuff like that. I'm content with it for depth, and it's not a bad compromise. So now, this will sit right beside all my other gauges in the panel, and I'll have reliable, high-quality NMEA 2000 data for depth. The great thing about it being NMEA 2000 is that I can put other devices on the backbone, including another sender somewhere else, another gauge somewhere else, like up in the upper helm, or I can read it on my phone or on my iPad. So there's no denying for certain applications this is pretty cool. The only thing is it's got this black bezel on it. So I'm just going to see if I can pop this black bezel off and somehow just snap the polished aluminum one on, spare one that I got here. These are designed to come off because, again, I believe it is to be used in the family of video gauges where the bezel is removable. Okay, there we go. Off it comes. Easy peasy. I could snap on one of video's bezels. So I'm going to try and just snap this one on. Would be perfect. It's not quite going to fit because of this ridge here. So I'll just have to cut that ridge down a little bit, and that will fit pretty much perfectly. So it'll look a little closer to the other gauges in my panel. Of course, this is the one I've turned into brushed aluminum. This one is still polished, and they'll all be brushed eventually. Okay, enough said. Last thing I want to say about this, very reasonable, under $100. So quite excited. Let's move on. Okay, on to the instrument panel itself. Some of you who have been watching along will know that this is 50 gauge brass, and which is quite thick. I don't know what that actually equates to, but it's a strong 16th, closer to an 1/8. Plenty heavy for what I'm doing. And I'm just trying to decide whether or not the sort of aesthetic of brass and chrome is really what I want, and I think it is. I'm not going to polish the brass. In fact, you can see in the corner here, I've just started to sort of buff it up a little bit with the Scotch-Brite, and it'll have that brushed finish, which will slowly tarnish over time, and I believe it will end up being just perfect. Okay, so now I got to lay out how the gauges are going to go on here, and instead of holding these all over it, I'm basically going to take you and show you the AutoCAD drawing of that.
So here you can see the basic layout, pretty straightforward. All the gauges are on the right, which ends up being centered on the actual wheel, and below that you can see 3 buttons, which are the engine start, preheat, and stop buttons, and on the left all the switches that are basically just for engine driving controls. I will have a separate control panel for house stuff. So this is just nav lights, etc., wipers, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, let's put it all together.
All right then, so you've seen the layout. It's basically gauges on this side, the engine start and stop controls, which are push buttons at the bottom, and these are the push buttons I'm going to use for that. I've looked at several different push buttons. I'll put a link to these below if I think of it. These are very high quality, nice action, and half-inch hole. And I think they're more suitable to have a better sort of style for what I'm trying to do here than some of the other switches I've looked at. All the toggle switches are standard, high quality, plain old toggle switches. I was trying to do them all with little ball toggle switches, but they're ridiculously expensive and you can't get them in the functions I need. Anyway, enough said. Gauges, some push buttons, a row of switches. You've seen what it looks like. You'll have noticed that the labels for the switches are the little brass tags that I'm using in various places on the boat, and so they'll just sit beside each switch, and I can stamp the function of the switch onto the tag, allowing me to change the switches over time if I have different conditions, and I'm going to have some spares anyway. So now I have to drill all the holes in this panel. Am I excited about that? No, but, well, I sort of am. Now I got to transfer all those all the center lines of all of those to drill all those holes. Well, the easiest way I could think of doing that was simply to take the drawing and print it out in full size, and then just lay the sheets down over where they're going to go. And I think I'll just glue them down with a little spray adhesive. These big X's are so that I can line up the two sheets because there wasn't quite enough width in the paper. And I've put center lines for all the switches and gauges on here, and I'll just take my center punch and drive it right through the paper down into the brass, and hopefully that will work perfectly. So let's get on with that. First thing I'm going to do is cut the sheets down to the exact size so it's easier to line up. Because there's quite a bit of extra brass at the top of the panel because of the way it tucks up underneath where the hinge goes, I've decided to tape them down onto the brass and then just tape it at the top, along the top here, which gives me a hinge so that after each center punch I can lift, should I choose to, and see how well the center punch is working in this brass, because, well, I'll show you in a minute. Everything will become clear. Okay. So this may end up stop right here right now, because what I'm going to use is one of these stretchy schmacky center punches, which are darn handy, awesome for wood. Woohoo, fantastic. I've never used it on metal, and I couldn't find my regular metal center punch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try with one and see how we do. Brass, after all, is relatively soft. It missed by a mile. It jumped. It did do a perfectly adequate center punch, though. Let's see how that happened. I wasn't holding it hard enough. That one's perfect. Okay. For some reason, it was sliding on the paper just as I let go. So you just have to push really, really, really hard. So I'm going to redo this one. Perfect. This one is certainly adequate. No one's going to be able to tell that's right. Okay. Now I have to do 40 more. All right. Well, I'm going to say that went very well. Probably 2 of them aren't as accurate as I'd like them to be, but really not bad at all. Neat. Now to drill them all out. Don't walk. Excellent. This is going great. Okay. Pardon me while I collapse, but I think that went great. Time will tell. Well, even though I bought a brand new half-inch drill bit to drill these holes, I know something about drilling sheet metal, and that it's going to bite and it's going to twist and I'm going to get deformation in the surface. So really I have to go up one step at a time through various drill sizes to reduce the likelihood of that happening. Now, the easiest way to do that is with a step drill. Well, I've actually never owned a step drill before, so I bought a cheap set, and as long as you don't jump past half-inch, maybe that's half-inch. Anyway, this might work out really well. Let's give it a try. Okay, so this idiot-proof one with the steps far apart looks like it's my best friend because it maxes out at half-inch, which is where I'm going for the switches. Okay. All right, I would say that has gone swimmingly and they're perfectly aligned. Okay, excellent. 3 more down here for the engine start stop switches. Absolutely wonderful. I love it, I love it, I love it. Okay, so the remaining holes will be cut with a hole saw, and they need a 1/4 inch pilot. Okay, the last couple I'll have to do by hand because the drill press doesn't have enough throat to get to these. Woohoo! I'll take advantage of this hole here to drill through. Well, if it hasn't been stressful so far, now we start with the hole saw. Now the truth is, this doesn't have to be a brilliant cut because there's quite a lot of flange on the gauges, so you know, it's not that precarious, but still don't want to make a mess. Not enough oomph. Barely scratch the surface. Okay. Is this a bad idea? I'll know in a minute. There we go. Well, amazing, eh? Little Makita, way more powerful than the drill press. Ow! Okay. Oh, I hope they're all in the right place. Time for the scary one. Okay. Both batteries are getting pretty low, so I'm going to take this time to start to clean up some of these edges while the battery charges back up a bit. I don't have a half-round file. This will do. While I'm waiting for the battery to charge, I'll get a head start on cleaning up the surface. I did put one scratch in it here. I'll be able to get it out, but it'll be work. Now the nice thing about brass is that I flick these switches over time. The oil from my hands and other assorted contaminants will slowly change the patina on this. And if I'm lucky, I'll love the way it looks. If I'm not, now there's a chance this is going to bite really hard, so I'm just going to put this piece of sandpaper foam between me and the sheet. Is that it? That's it. Oh, Lovely, lovely, lovely. There you go, folks. That's the panel. All right, so let's populate this thing. I'm going to do it over the box here so it's self-supported. So we'll start with toggle switches. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm setting up the toggle switches so they're off to the left and on to the right. I don't know why, I just am. This is not the final installation, so not too worried about it. Yes, 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 yes. Engine oil. Engine water. Starting to look pretty good. Let's toss in that depth sounder. And its bezel, even though it doesn't actually fit yet. Oh my gosh, my gosh, my gosh. I love it. 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 Well, good morning. I have to admit, just as I was wrapping up last night, my back just said, that's it. So you missed out on the reveal. So here we go. Is this gorgeous or is this gorgeous? I am so pleased. Again, this is just a mock-up. This is all gonna have to come apart and be wired, and of course tags and all kinds of things. I haven't even decided yet what switches do what, although I have a pretty good idea. Okay, excellent. It's Saturday morning. I gotta finish up the edit and get this to you. Plus, I have to have a Saturday morning beer of the week. Not the end of the world. Well, hello there and welcome to the Travels with Geordie Beer of the Week. And yes, I never give up the opportunity for an early Saturday morning beer. All right, let's get straight to it. This is from Riot Brewing. It's called the First 4 Years Riot Double IPA and Life's a Riot limited release. So I'm looking forward to this actually. However, I'm only gonna have a little tall skinny of it because I'll have the rest of it with lunch a little later. Okay then, well, what a week it's been, mostly in bed. As I mentioned, I did have an opportunity to go see a specialist, actually a kinesiologist, a wonderful woman who understands this stuff a lot better than I do, and I got some great exercises moving forward. I'm going to be just fine. It's just going to take time. So cheers to that. Oh, that's awesome. That's really awesome. That may not make it to lunch, or lunch might happen sooner. Anyway, okay, so last week's winner of a Travels with Geordie t-shirt was Heyjer, H-E-Y-J-E-R. So congratulations, Hey, or Heyjer. Shoot me off an email and we'll make sure you get your t-shirt. Thanks again. Last week, a new patron came aboard. Thanks ever so much to Catherine Crosby. I really appreciate it, and cheers to you. As well, a new supporter through PayPal, Nicholas Pappas. Thank you, Nicholas. This has been just wonderful. Cheers. All right then. Well, I must say, it's been really great to get back to some sense of work. It was wonderful that I had a project I could do this week, mostly standing up. Next week, we're going to get going with getting some of that wired up and connected, and I think I can do it. So I'm really looking forward to moving ahead. All you need now is a word of the week, and could you guess gauge? Gauge is an interesting word. You can do all kinds of things with it. So if you'd like to win a Travels with Geordie t-shirt, you know what to do. See you next week. Cheers.